again, welcome to day 2 of the Wisconsin Integrated Resource Management Conference. Things are going well. I hope you're enjoying and feeling still connected, even though we're all in different areas and not all together like we normally would be. We of course want to thank our 2021 sponsors, JWR, Liberty Tire, and Foth as our platinum sponsors. We have Carton Council as our gold sponsor, and then we have Rarick Pacific Company, Tetra Tech, Synagro, and SCS Engineers in our silver spot, and then our bronze sponsors, Oak Ridge Engineering, Waste Advantage Magazine, and Rogue Chem Americas. We couldn't do our conference without the generous support of all of our sponsors. Not only do they help us with all the logistics, the funding pieces, but they also just provide a lot of fun and energy throughout the conference. So we thank them, and if you spot any of them throughout your networking, thank them as well. Some highlights for today. We have the Interactive Virtual Expo Hall. Yay, it opens today right after this session. Our Expo Hall opens up in Remo. As always, like at our in-person conference, we will have drawings and prizes. Our theme of the day is a fun hat or face mask. My apologies that I don't have mine on. I'll get it on later. But if you go see Karen at the IT table during that Expo Hall, show her what you got, and then you can be entered to win in that drawing for the theme of the day. And then feel free to just continue wearing that hat or mask throughout the event. And then at 4 o'clock today, we have our virtual MRF tour. We're heading to Steamboat Springs, Colorado to see this MRF. And like it says here, learn how the small town used innovation to overcome challenges in recycling. Should be great. We don't often get the chance to just go on over to Colorado Springs, or Steamboat Springs. So feel free to join us for that. And then just a little bit on Zoom success. I think we're all getting into this groove, but just so that you know, you have myself here as a staff member. If you need any technical support throughout the session, Debbie Dodson is here as our moderator, helping to guide through. So if you have, Debbie will also be managing our chat. You can use the chat to make comments. You can use the chat to ask questions throughout. We have 4 different presenters, 3 different kind of sections of our presentation today. And Debbie will be monitoring the behind the scenes of all of that. So feel free to ask away throughout. Again, we're going to ask that everybody keep their cameras off and stay muted. Use the chat like we just said, and you have those reaction buttons if you'd like to use them. We are scheduled for 50 minutes as all the sessions, and we're probably going to use every minute of the session today. We may even go straight until that 2 o'clock hour. We are recording this session as always, so that if you need to review it later, and you do have the option of changing your viewing experience, although we do recommend speaker mode so that you see what is the main slide right on the forefront. I may not get a link to the evaluation form in this. I'll see, but it'll be right at the end of the session. But if I don't get it into that chat, or if you have to leave early, all of the evaluation links can be found on the session descriptions within the Attendify schedule. So please go and rate our sessions, let our speakers know what you thought, let the conference in general know, and that's really important to all of us. So, okay, I'm going to, and if you've just joined us, we are running a poll. The poll is still open. I'm going to stop my screen share here. And then while I get the, now, Debbie.
I closed the poll, Angie.
You closed the poll. You could do that.
And I put the results up, so everyone knows who's in the room now.
Great. So I'm going to, at this moment, Debbie, I'm going to let you take it away while I get the slides for our first presentation up, you can go ahead and introduce our first presenter.
Great, thank you so
So
much.
I can close this down, Debbie, or do you want to leave it open? It doesn't matter to me.
Oh, there we go. I think I closed it down.
Okay, I still see it on mine. So I'm going to stop share results and then I'm going to close it. Okay.
Thank you, Angie, and really thank you to all the Waste Connections, Recycling Connections staff for putting this conference on. And good afternoon to all of you, and thanks for joining us today and for participating in the poll. We kind of wanted to know who we were talking to. It's a school district, it's a school session, and we don't have anyone from the school district here. So we appreciate all of you coming to hear what school districts are doing around Wisconsin and in other parts of the country. I'm Debbie Dodson. I'm the school recycling coordinator for the Carton Council. I won't go into details on the Carton Council and what we do, but I do want you to come by our booth in Remo at 2 o'clock today, right after this session. Not only will I be at our table talking to you about the free resources we have available for schools, including financial grants, but you can also have a chance to win a $100 donation in your name to the nonprofit organization of your choice. Our first speaker today is Angeline Koch, who is a Sustainability Project Specialist for Milwaukee Public Schools. This is a newly created position, and in this role, Angeline manages a variety of projects, including removing asphalt playgrounds in favor of installing green infrastructure, as well as district-wide sustainability initiatives like recycling, reduction of plastic use, and energy conservation. Angeline also spent a good part of the year reviewing and rewriting the RFPs for their waste and recycling services, and that's what she'll be talking about. Thanks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Debbie and Angie. Again, my name is Angeline Koch. I am the Sustainability Project Specialist for Milwaukee Public Schools. I'm going to talk about, as Debbie said, the importance of reviewing and revising your trash hauling RFP to better leverage your district or your municipality's recycling and landfill diversion goals. Next. Thank you. A little bit of background data on MPS. As many of you know, MPS is the largest school district in Wisconsin and educates about 75,000 students within 160 school buildings. Then we have another like 10 administration buildings. MPS offers breakfast and lunch to its students every day. So the volume of our trash and recyclables, is quite substantial. At MPS, we support robust recycling and landfill diversion goals at the school level. About a dozen of our schools also have a compost program with their school meals. Recycling and landfill diversion efforts are part of our school communities, and several have been recognized for their efforts, like Lincoln Avenue School, pictured here, which is located in Walker's Point neighborhood of Milwaukee on the south side. Lincoln was the first MPS school to be designated as a sugar maple school by Green and Healthy Schools Wisconsin, and the first bilingual school to reach sugar maple status in Wisconsin. As we know, making sure that any recycling program is successful involves many factors, both inside the building and outside at the dumpsters. So after I started at MPS, I looked at how we could improve recycling and landfill diversion efforts across the district. Fortunately, I started about 9 months before our trash hauling RFP was set to launch. That provided me time to research what other districts were doing and to improve recycling efforts through their RFP overhaul. As a lawyer by training, my first thought was to look at our RFP for trash services to see if any improvements or updates were necessary. And the short answer is yes, improvements were definitely necessary. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide kind of shows what I found looking at our RFP. And like many RFPs, there was a lot of contractual boilerplate. The RFP contained the usual information about cost, duration of the contract services, size of dumpsters, etc. And then with specific regard to recycling, the only added term were to list the acceptable recyclables that the vendor accepted and the cost for contamination of a recycling dumpster. Next. Thank you. More telling in my review of the RFP was what was not included in the RFP. The RFP did not contain requirements to provide waste audits, training sessions for our staff, did not provide information or requirements for clear dumpster markings. There was no notification to the district if there was contamination problems at any particular school. And kind of most importantly, the list of recyclables in RFP did not match that of the city of Milwaukee. Which of course is a problem because you have staff and students who have to think about 2 different sets of recyclables. And here I wanted to launch a poll to ask if your school district or your recycling RFP is aligned with your municipality program. And if you want to launch that poll, Angie, that first one for us, that would be great. And perhaps because there's not many or any school districts here and so many municipal representatives, maybe perhaps the question could be amended to be, does your school district's RFP match your municipality? Oh, there it is. Thank you. Yeah, looks like we have some answers coming in. A lot of people, at least the people who have responded so far, don't know. We have some yeses. That's great. So yeah, this is a great indication of maybe, you know, for those of you present either in the municipality side or vendor side, to check to make sure that your, you know, property owner RFP list of recyclables does match your municipality. Next slide. So the success of any program requires, you know, a partnership between the property owner and the hauler, and a commitment to work together to maximize landfill diversion and recycle as much as possible. You know, from the hauler side, you know, unclearly marked dumpsters can lead to cross-contamination of materials. Like we see here, there are several dumpsters that have, you know, some plastic tossed in. The recycling designation is kind of a small sticker there on the front. Next slide. Thanks. And you can see, you know, some more examples of that contamination. You know, and repeated contamination spoils the opportunity to recycle materials that were placed in the correct dumpster. Next slide. Contamination also increases the cost because the hauler will charge then to send a landfill pickup of your contaminated recycled dumpster. Next slide. So with the goal of increasing the volume of recycling and decreasing costs, you know, MPS overhauled its RFP to include provisions that essentially created a partnership with our contractor. We asked our hauler to provide a dedicated education and technical support person to identify issues and offer support and training. We asked for participation in engineering training conferences and principal institutes to support our training of our staff that are in the buildings. We also required that recycling dumpsters be a different color than landfill dumpsters, again, to make it clear which bags go where. We also asked for quarterly diversion data and to be notified of contamination. So once we are notified of that, we can really drill down on what the cause of the contaminations are. And most significantly, we required that the vendor's list of accepted recyclables match the city of Milwaukee so that kids and staff are recycling the same items at home and at school. You know, this overhaul took some time, and I also wanted to launch our next and final poll, you know, asking if your school district or municipality has done any type of review of their RFP or assisted their school district with updating their RFP. There's the poll. Thank you, Angie. Great, so it looks like several people hadn't thought of it. I just hope this will make it to your to-do list next week. Thank you. Next slide, please. So after outlining expectations of our contractor, we also looked inward at what we can do to increase recycling and decrease contamination. We work to identify diversion goals and providing some uniform signage. We are working with the Department of School Nutrition to ensure that cafeteria staff are supported in their training. We also looked at incentives for meeting or exceeding goals and making sure that bins inside our buildings were uniform and clearly marked throughout. Next slide. Our new dumpsters, which is kind of hard to tell here, but our new dumpsters are more clearly marked because our recyclables have yellow lids and our landfill dumpsters have black lids. We also have a larger signage that differentiate between recycling and landfill, as well as some pictures of what recycling is acceptable in the yellow lidded bins. And this is really important because our engineers and school staff are often hauling out garbage bags in the early morning or in the late afternoon, early evening when light is not the best. So having that really quick visual of color will help reduce contamination. Next slide. With a revamped RFP, we are positioned to reduce costs by reducing the incidence of contamination, reduce landfill deposits, increase recycling, and educate our next generation of recyclers. I just wanted to thank you for your time, and I encourage all of you in whatever capacity you are employed to reach out to your school district to kind of offer your help or assistance in their RFP review to make sure that you are supporting your school district. Our trash haulers definitely have a lot of great information on their websites about their efforts to reduce their carbon footprint and be more sustainable. And it would be strongly encouraged to take that effort and that enthusiasm into your RFPs and into your contracts to make sure that the commitment for recyclables and sustainability are shared from not just their websites, but also in your RFPs and contracts. Thank you very much.
Wow, thanks, Angeline. You've powered through that. You did not even use your allotted time. Thank you very much. I'm going to hold questions till the end just so that we make sure everybody else gets in there. But I really appreciate everyone who participated in the polls as well. It was clear that 75% don't know if their school recycling programs are aligned with community recycling programs. And even though everyone doesn't appear that anybody from a school district is on this in the audience right now, I think we can all agree that we want the symmetry between the programs. We want students to be able to recycle what they recycle at school, what they can recycle at home, and what they can recycle at home, recycle at school. So just having that continuity is really an important feature, and I appreciate you bringing that up in the poll. We are going to move on to our second duo today. Our second speakers are Claire Olekshak and from Sustain Dane and Chris Jimison from SCS Engineers. As Executive Director of Sustain Dane, Claire's aim is to accelerate a sustainable environment and economy that benefits all members of the community. Chris is a project manager with SCS Engineers in Madison. Chris became involved with school recycling at Madison Public Schools as a parent who wondered why his child's school didn't recycle. He has taken that question and turned it into a passion and will not rest until recycling is district-wide. So Claire and Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Debbie. We had a poll question. Is there any way we could get that poll question launched? And then we can go to the next slide. So I just wanted to put this poll question out there and get a guess on how many people think we're doing recycling in the Madison School District here in Dane County, Wisconsin. So this is the number of schools that we think are public schools that we think are recycling. So I'm seeing kind of answers all across the board. And to be honest with you, when I kind of started to get involved, I assumed that most of the schools were indeed recycling across the Madison School District. But over the years of getting involved, and it took a few years of being involved to get to this point, I realized that not a majority of the schools were, but less than 5 schools in the district of the 53 schools have established recycling programs. So that was really an eye-opener for me and really upped my engagement level with this initiative. So just kind of how I got involved with this. we're really looking just kind of at the school level. So back in 2015, I was serving as a volunteer on the Resource Conservation Commission in Fitchburg, and one of our commissioners wanted to go to lunch with her son. So her son was in kindergarten or first grade, same age as my son, at the same school. And she came back and she said, there's no recycling program in the cafeterias. We should really get something started there. And so we started in 2015 and really started to do some outreach on landfills and recycling and composting. And we challenged the fifth graders and did a relay race we did a couple of these a year with the fifth graders, and really tried to test their knowledge after we did a session on all of these different things as to what should be landfilled versus what should be recycled versus what should be composted. And so it's a fun activity to do with the kids. But our ultimate goal was to really kind of build up to getting their cafeteria recycling program going. And so we spent a lot of time gauging interest and working through transitions. So one of the challenges with the schools that we found is there's a lot of staff transitions. We went through 3 different principals in our time working with Aldo Leopold School in Madison. And each of those stages, required us to kind of start over and kind of regain engagement and interest and buy-in in this program. And so kind of in the beginning of 2018, we started to talk. I was fortunate enough to be in the cafeteria at Leopold one day when the food and nutrition director for the Madison School District happened to pop in, and he really kind of, told me more about the issue of this being a district-wide issue. He said that several of the schools have liquid collection in the schools, but very few were doing any type of carton recycling. Next slide, please. So in March of 2018, we started with a baseline waste audit at Leopold Elementary School. We did it over 2 days, the 20th and 21st of March. And from this, we just gathered data. We didn't know exactly how we were going to launch the program. We had some ideas, but we knew that milk cartons were going to be a part of it. And we thought about these paper trays. So the school district back in the early 70s decided to do a decentralized system of preparing meals, but that also caused a lot of packaging. So all of the school lunches and breakfast items are packaged up and then sent off to all of the 53 schools across the Madison School District. So with all this packaging, there's quite a bit of waste. The kitchens at these schools are smaller, so there really isn't a lot of space for dishwashing equipment, which is kind of how I grew up in school in rural Wisconsin. We had kitchens and we had reusable plates and trays, but came to find out that they had, essentially a paper tray that was used at the beginning of each session, and that oftentimes that tray was just thrown away. So in May, a couple months later, we started the launch of the program, and it carried all the way through until the pandemic hit in March of 2020, but planning to get it going back at that elementary school shortly thereafter. With the help of the Carton Council, we also launched in 2019 at a middle school and did a pilot program there. So that was Cherokee Heights Middle School in Madison. Next slide, please. So this was the other piece. So finding out that a number of schools, was under 5 that had programs in place, but then also looking at the potential of this program. And so the 75% reduction in waste volume was an eye-opener to me, and the custodial staff was blown away the first time we were doing our waste audit and said, where's all the trash? We normally have taken loads of trash out to the dumpster by now. And I said, well, I think the tray stacking is helping you out. Also, we're recycling the cartons, but I was pretty blown away to see that, just on the volume side of things, that there was a 75% reduction in the waste volume. And so those trays and all the different objects were taking up a lot of space within their waste each and every day in the cafeteria. When you multiply this out through the school year, this was fun, the full year that we did this in the schools, the students really got a kick out of how many bags that we kept out of a landfill. And just at this one school, it was over 8,000 bags were kept out of the landfill over the course of a school year, which is pretty remarkable. So you can see, just how much, this engaged me and made me very passionate to kind of see this through, if not now, when, if not me, helping to lead this, who and how is this going to get done? And so I will not rest until the Madison School District has a firm program across all of its schools. Next slide, please. So this just kind of shows a couple of different photos of unstacked and high volume going into a waste container compared to stacking. So this is at the middle school level where we're doing kind of the same practice. They have food residue on them, so they often need to be thrown away, but they can take up substantially less volume if we do some stacking of the food boats and plates on the front end. Next slide, please. These are just some of the ideas that we've used that have contributed to the success. So the recycling container, I would say a very important aspect of that is multiple holes in the lid. Sometimes you'll have a lot of students coming up at once. So once students get back into the cafeteria, I think it will be important to have good lids. The lid also provides a control. Sometimes students, just aren't thinking very clearly and they will dump their full food trays into the clean milk cartons, and we had that happen a number of times, and with the lids we didn't have that happening anymore. Signage is important as well. We had to put it on the side of the containers in both of our cafeteria situations, but if you can have the containers up against the wall, putting them at eye level would be even better. The tray stacking, we did do clean tray and dirty tray stacking. The students actually did a really good job with this. We made the rule to make them completely clean because it was really hard to define a slight residue being okay with recyclers. So if it was completely clean, those trays would be stacked and then also recycled along with the milk cartons. At the middle school level, we also did have a share table for peelable fruit. These fruits would then go into after school programs, and sometimes kids would take them home. But one of the numbers from earlier was just how much food waste we have in school programs. We were getting about 180 to 190 pounds a day in the 700-person elementary school, which is about 1/4 pound per person of food waste. And then one of the nice things coming out of this is giving feedback to the food and nutrition department. So they were able to change kind of their bids for sport packets, and with that eliminated straws from those sport packets. So those were eliminated from the Madison schools as part of this program. Next slide, please. So some of the keys to these programs, I think getting buy-in at the school level, administrative, teacher, custodial, and student buy-in. I think that, each school is a little different, and having a good setup at each school is, provides a little, there's an opportunity there for some outside support to provide some expertise there. And so I think that that is a good thing that probably needs to happen at most schools, just to kind of get it established. Also with us, establishing good project partners has been important. So the Carton Council has been instrumental sharing signage from other schools. In return, we're trying to share good signage with them to share with other schools that are struggling with these same issues. Sustain Dane, who's going to speak next, they're ones that I think can really help to scale this program up. They're a nonprofit in Madison, and they have been very much engaged in this project for the last year. And then also community volunteers to kind of help us monitor and help the students have success with this program. So some things that we still want to develop are some of the educational components to go along with the program, building up some more of our SOPs, and then eventually I think getting this to be student-led, so it's not dependent on an outside organization or a staff person or a principal to kind of get everything rolling forward. I think student-led is where we want to work towards eventually with this program. Next slide, please. So prior to the pandemic, we started to work with Aldo Leopold Elementary School about collecting at stations. So breakfast in the classroom was starting to become a thing last school year before the pandemic weighed in, and the custodial staff was really struggling with collecting the cartons in the classroom level. So we wanted to try to help out with that. So we're talking to the Carton Council before the pandemic hit about doing this pilot, and now there's even more value with it with the pandemic and kind of the situation that we're going to be coming back to with more meals in the classrooms in the short term. But I think there is long-term opportunity with breakfast in the classrooms and also meal and snack breaks. And at the current time, we're working closely with 2 pilot schools in Madison. With that, I'll pass it over to Claire to talk a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Chris. Next slide, please. So Chris came and talked with Sustain Dane 2019. And like many of you noticed in the chat, we were also really inspired and excited by the work he had done and felt that as an organizational partner, we'd be able to help increase the speed and the scope of moving to the district-wide adoption. One of my last meetings in person before we went to stay at home was with Debbie and Jim and Chris, a great lunch. I hope to do it again soon. And we outlined kind of 2020 goals at that point. So the 2 schools, like Chris said, getting the recycling in the increased and creating the standard operating procedures, creating educational videos so it'd be easier to kind of remind the students along the way. The communications plan behind outside of the classroom, the parents are knowing, communities knowing their support, and then the district-wide adoption. Next slide, please. So as we've had this pause, I think there's actually been a lot of good. First off, we've found throughout our entire kind of organization, increased participation and kind of a desire to support the environment and support sustainability, possibly from this time in COVID and us understanding how getting outside in nature has been one of the few things that has really been able to feed us and keep us kind of happy and grounded during this time. I also think that projects like this and many other projects can be really rewarding because of that team effort and that tangible success at the end. So we are going back to school in the Madison School District March 9th, and we've continued our 2 schools throughout this time and are really excited now because everything is somewhat new. There are new procedures being written. There is a new way it has to operate. So we're not in the section of having to change what's happening. It's more including in the coming back and the new way we're operating, making sure that this recycling is going to be top of mind and happening. Next slide, please. So 2021, as we've adapted, we are including, what COVID has mean and making that be part of it. The 2 schools we have, what's unique is that one of them have sinks in the classrooms and one does not, which is 2 different approaches. With sinks, you can see the design on the side about what a process will be now for emptying the liquid and then recycling immediately the carton. And that also allows us to scale within a particular section of schools that have sinks much more quickly. Schools without sinks, we're approaching it differently with a kind of container to be able to put the liquid in. And we're going to be working closely with the janitorial staff and the custodial staff to see kind of what's going to work best in terms of disposing of that. So that one may move a little bit slower, but I see a lot of progress happening going forward, especially in the sink area. So the signage, standard operating procedure, and then as April comes, when we feel, there's a little bit of a breathing room, we got through the first phase, and it's Earth Day to communicate and expand. Next slide, please. Also, what's really important is to note, I think, the time that we're in right now. Our school district did just get approval for a $33 million referendum. And through that approval process, the community was asking for what are the sustainability considerations. And this, I think, is maybe not surprising. Madison has a lot of history in sustainability and recycling, and it's really important. And I think the program that Chris has been working on and pushing is really timed right now to happen, because it is a community-wide conversation about sustainability in the schools. Next slide. So we talk a lot of Sustain Dane about building the momentum, starting small, building those connections. And that's what Chris has been doing. And I'm so impressed with his work and really excited that he kind of came to us and we're able to help support as this phases and grows. One of the things that we also talk about is, as you go through change, is to talk about what's staying the same. Some people, as we probably know, are really ready and excited to try something different, innovative, and others are a little more hesitant. So also helping understand that this is part of a process and much of it staying the same, but this part that is changing is going to be, defined and able to do, and also able to be adapted as it works. Tracking progress, the celebrating that Chris has done as we move to district-wide, and those numbers get bigger and bigger, as well as just accelerating from there. Next slide. So to end, I'm going to share with you one of the Sustain Dane phrases, which is change happens when inspired people take action. And I think a lot of people probably this presentation would relate to that. So thank you all for the work that you're doing in your communities. And we look forward to continuing to give you updates at future conferences about how we're growing this program. That's all.
Thank you so much, Claire and Chris. We are going to roll straight into Janet Whited. Janet is an environmental specialist for San Diego Unified School District. Janet facilitates efforts to reach the goals of the district's climate action plan. And to this end, she develops programs to expand recycling and composting, conducts environmental education and outreach, and coordinates the district's edible food reduction, recovery, and rescue program at over 180 schools and district facilities. Janet?
Thanks, Debbie, for the introduction. I'm excited to be with you all virtually from San Diego. I don't often get to physically attend conferences outside of my home state, so these virtual gatherings are a treat for me. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into my presentation. So how can school sustainability programs thrive in changing times? This is a good question. I'll be focusing my presentation today mainly on sustainability options for meal service in the classroom, should this become a more widespread practice. Before I do that though, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on our school district. We're a municipal school district located within the boundaries of the city of San Diego. And overall, there are 41 separate school districts within the entire county of San Diego. And San Diego Unified has 181 schools and around 129,000 enrollment, broken down to 117 elementary and K-8 schools. We have 25 middle schools, 23 high schools, and 16 alternative/other schools. In addition, we have 50 charter schools in the district, and 46 of our elementary schools have a state preschool program on campus. We also have 15 administrative, maintenance, and other facilities. And overall, our district has 62% free and reduced price lunches. We're one of many school districts in California that started and still continue with nearly 100% distance learning for our students during the school year. Right now, we're currently operating 78 drive-through locations for families to pick up meals to take home for their children. And so far, our fabulous food and nutrition services team has served over 11 million meals since our schools closed on March 16th, 2020. Of course, my main focus today is to talk about different strategies for serving meals when students are on campus. And specifically, I want to share about our Breakfast in the Classroom, or BIC program as we call it, and how we hope to expand sustainability options for in-class meal service when our students return. First, I want to start with Freeze Elementary, which is one of our BIC pilot schools. This school had tremendous support from their daytime building services supervisor or head custodian, who basically developed the program for his school. With help from grants like from the Carton Council, I was able to support these efforts with additional recycling bins, training, and signage for the program. As you can see, Freeze is not a very large school with 306 student enrollment, but 100% of the students receive no-cost school breakfast and lunch each day. So basically, this is how our BIC service starts out at most of our 66 schools that participate in the program. As part of classroom leadership and service, every morning 2 to 3 designated students from each class report to the cafeteria and pick up a rolling insulated cooler filled with milk and other cold items. Dry breakfast items are usually bagged on top if there's not enough room in the cooler. And on days with warm breakfast items like breakfast burritos, a smaller insulated bag is attached on top. The students also pick up 1 trash can on a rolling dolly and 1 blue recycling bin from the breezeway outside the cafeteria. And students then take these items to their classrooms, and then every student takes breakfast items straight to their desk. Then breakfast is consumed in the classroom, and afterwards any residual milk or juice is either emptied into the classroom sink or into the trash can. Recyclables are placed directly in the blue recycling bin. And sometimes plastic liners are used in the recycling bins at the discretion of the custodial staff. Our waste and recycling hauler and the material recovery facilities we use accept clear liners from our schools. But I know that's not always the case for other school districts. We do try and minimize use of the liners whenever possible, is to limit cost and the amount of film plastic used. This film plastic is generally not recycled by our material recovery facilities. After breakfast, 3 designated students from each class return the insulated rolling cooler to the cafeteria and the recycling bin and trash can to the breezeway outside of the cafeteria. Some classrooms combine the recycling bin inside the trash bin, so only 2 students are needed for the task. So these are pictures of the return trash and recycling bins to their designated location and the coolers back to the cafeteria. Custodial staff takes it from there to empty trash and recyclables into their proper dumpsters and then rinse the cans. We heavily promote offer versus serve in the BIC program, well, in all of our meal programs, to cut down on food waste. And this allows students to choose what they want of the required meal components. And our kitchen staff estimates the number of specific items to send to each class based on past student preferences. And anything that is returned to the kitchen in the coolers is evaluated, and acceptable items are put back into production for another meal service. And food items are wiped down and the coolers are sanitized. So prior to COVID and school closures, various items that were returned from the BIC program that couldn't be put back into production were included in our food rescue program. So we do plan to continue this practice once schools reopen for individually wrapped food items. So Carver Elementary is another one of our poly-lit BIC schools. A little bit of background on this school. Our district has an annual recycling challenge that awards schools for their waste diversion and environmental education efforts. And Carver Elementary is one of our schools that is very competitive and really wanted to earn recognition in the challenge. And part of their effort to reduce waste and recycle more was to voluntarily expand recycling to their breakfast in the classroom program. The initiative was spearheaded by their custodial team and supported by the principal and teachers. They were able to earn the Most Improved Award in the 2018-19 Recycling Challenge through their efforts, moving from a 9% waste diversion rate to a 29% diversion over the course of the school year. And I know that doesn't sound like a huge diversion rate, but we base our school's diversion on the weight of 3 cubic yard trash and recycling dumpsters versus capacity of the dumpsters. So it often sounds kind of low. As we work to keep more and more heavy food waste out of the dumpsters, I really believe these diversion rates will climb significantly. So similar to Fries Elementary, each morning 2 to 3 designated students from each class report to the breezeway outside of the kitchen, and they pick up a rolling insulated cooler filled with the milk, and again, dry breakfast items are bagged on top. Students also pick up the 1 trash can on a rolling dolly and 1 blue recycling bin from the breezeway outside of the cafeteria. And students take these items directly to their classrooms. So this is a typical classroom disposal line at Carver. After students eat breakfast, they pour any residual milk or juice into the sink or into the trash can. Recyclable items are placed in the blue recycling bin, and then the liner is pulled and placed in the trash can. After breakfast, 2 designated students from each class return the insulated rolling cooler to the kitchen and return the trash can with a plastic bag of recyclables to the breezeway outside of the kitchen. And then custodial staff take the recyclables and trash to their respective dumpsters. In the kitchen, certain unopened items are wiped down so they can be served again, and appropriate food items are rescued and the insulated rolling carts are disinfected. So reality check, not everyone is always on board. Some teachers don't quite participate up to standards, so the custodial team makes a note to try and encourage them to participate properly. And often the principal will also make rounds to see how things are going and provide necessary encouragement when appropriate. So, well, that's the basics of our in-classroom meal service model. It's pretty simple and not hard to replicate. Once our schools are open and meals are being served and consumed on campus again, we plan to expand this model to lunchtime service as necessary. So right now, since our students are still receiving meals to go, we're reinforcing recycling efforts at home with recycling reminders at our grab-and-go meal distribution sites. Last but not least, these are a few of the other ways our Food and Nutrition Services team and myself are working to increase sustainable actions and awareness while our campuses are still closed. We're designing menus so food can be repurposed the next day, if not used the day of service. Producing educational cooking videos on how to prepare certain foods at home. We're also trying to incorporate a food waste, composting, smart serving, and packaging segment in these videos. We're working with our food core team to provide resources and videos that parents can show at home on gardening, composting, and waste reduction. We're also promoting Offer versus Serve and our Love Food Not Waste program at our curbside sites and encouraging families to practice smart food preparation, packaging, and waste reduction at home. And we're also encouraging students to visit us in the cafeteria when they return so we can serve meals on trays and reduce the amount of product packaging. So that's it. That's my presentation. Thanks for this opportunity to share with you. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time with any questions.
Thank you so much, Janet. We do have a little bit of a time to go. We can go all the way up to the top of the hour and then hope you go over to the exhibit hall. I saw a question that got answered just real quickly. It was in asking about Milwaukee Public Schools dealing with how they do recycling with their materials loose versus bagged. Angeline, do you just want to touch on that real quickly? I know you answered it, but this way everyone will hear the answer.
Yeah, it is a problem, right? I mean, contamination is always an issue inside the building and out. So we try to encourage our engineers or our staff and students just to put the recyclables, right in. You don't need a liner. I mean, put it in the recycle bin and dump that right into the dumpster. Or if you need to use a plastic bag to carry it, open it up, hopefully reuse it, but don't put it in the dumpster.
Thank you. I have a question that did not come up, but your RFP, Angeline, because my experience with schools is so many of them just roll them over into Evergreen and never really go back and review them. And of course, recycling has evolved and they might still be working off an RFP that was more emphasis on waste hauling than recycling. Will you, can you share your RFP with others?
Yeah, that probably would not be a problem. I can send it out. I assume materials will be disseminated, and our RFP, yeah, I can get that out, no problem. And I would agree that even looking at the list of recyclables, it had things in there that no one even uses now, really. I mean, like phone books, there's, even the list itself needed to be updated to like more real world material that's encountered by everyone. But yeah, I can definitely make that available.
That would be great. I'm not seeing any other questions. Is that because our panelists did such a fantastic job answering everybody's questions? If you have a question, you want to unmute yourself and ask, go ahead. In the meantime, I'll tell you, Janet and I were not live on camera because we live in San Diego and it's 75 degrees here today and we're at the beach and we didn't want to rub that in for everybody. Totally kidding, except it is hot. I think I'll wrap that up. I don't see any other questions. The evaluation post is over in the chat feature. Please go there and fill out the evaluation for this panel. I want to thank all of our panelists. I think they did a really good job at providing a comprehensive look at different aspects of school recycling, whether program is inspired by a professional like Janet and Angeline, or a super awesome volunteer parent like Chris, and then it becomes a professional program. The inspiration for school recycling comes from many, many different points. I also love the fact that it's going to be a legacy program that will live on past when Chris and his children move on to other schools. So thank you all for joining us. Please come to the exhibit hall, which is in 5 minutes. The Carton Council does have a table, as do many other great organizations. And we'll see you there. Thank you all so much.